This is Polish Peter, and welcome to episode 79 of Immigrant Masters Unite. Hey everyone, it's Polish Peter with Immigrant Masters Unite, and on today's podcast episode, the question that we're answering is, what do you really want in life? And what is your identity? And how can you live a fulfilling life that really excites you, that lifts you up, that it's almost like you're on a cloud nine, living like on cloud nine? Hey, so if you have any kind of questions like this, I highly encourage you to listen to this episode. I have a really good friend of mine, Alex Pardo. His parents are from Cuba. And I've had him before on this particular episode, on this particular podcast, episode 44. If you haven't listened to that episode, I highly encourage you to, after you finish listening to this episode, go back and listen to that one, because back then we talked about how about hiring people, hiring the right people on your team and things like that. And today on the episode, it's been about a year and a half. The guy has had a transformation in his life. And what we started talking about is identity, how your identity is wrapped into different things and how to carry your identity anywhere so nobody can take it away from you. We talked about what do you truly want in life and how to live a fulfilling life. For a lot of us here, especially immigrants, when we come to this country, we feel like we need to do certain things, right? We can't dream. We can't do things that we truly want to do. And over time, what ends up happening is we just get stuck in doing something, right? As opposed to, maybe our parents wanted us to do something. We talk about in this particular episode how to actually live that truly fulfilling life. So it's a great episode. He actually, at the end, he shares a really cool book that I would recommend for you guys. And his tip that he talks about, the one thing that you would leave this episode to give to the immigrants, was a really powerful little tip. So I highly encourage you guys to listen to it. Wait till the end of the episode. And without further ado, here's my friend, my good friend, my cohort, Alex Pardo from Cuba. I am on Facebook Live right now, I think. And we have a new episode that we're recording here. So Alex Pardo here. Welcome back to the show. You've been here on that episode way back in the day, episode 44, I think, of Immigrant Masters Unite here. So welcome back, man.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate the invite. That means that the last time I was here wasn't a complete chaos for you. So I appreciate you having me on, and I'm looking forward to just sharing and adding as much value as I can to your audience.
Awesome. Or I said, maybe the second time would be better. Maybe actually do something right, man. So I'm just trying it out again. So,
yeah.
All right, man.
I'll try not to screw it up.
All right. Sounds good, man. And if you talk a little bit with an accent, that would help. Okay. So Alex is originally, family and everything's from Cuba. So he's got that going on. But I wanted to bring him back on the show because last time that we've been here, there's been some certain things that happened for you since the last time you were here. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I think I want to say it was probably a good year and a half, 2 years ago that I was on your show, Peter, and I was in the thick of growing and scaling my wholesaling business here in South Florida. So just for a little bit of context, I came from a corporate background when I graduated from college, did that for a couple of years, started the real estate business, and I had, that was back in end of 2005. And so I've been involved in real estate investing and doing all types of deals for the last 15 years. And I was sharing with you before we started recording that, when you do something for so long and you have a voice in the industry and you have a platform, obviously I have a podcast. And so to a certain degree, it almost becomes like a part of your identity. Mm-hmm. And I realized through a lot of, working with my coach, personal development, a lot of journaling, reflecting, that you are not your business and your business is not you. Your business is a separate entity. It's a separate living, breathing organization that is meant to not only add value and help the clients and the people that you serve, but it's also meant to serve you and your life and your family and provide for your lifestyle, not the other way around. I see so many entrepreneurs that are building a business where essentially they have a high paying job and they're a slave to their business. So anyway, fast forward when you and I had a conversation, I was building a team. I think I had 8 or 9 team members, and overhead was slowly starting to balloon. And what I mean by that is it got to a point at beginning to middle of last year, my overhead was somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000 a month. And for some people that might be very low, and for others that's very high. I guess it's all relative. But for me, Peter, that was never the vision I had for my business. I never wanted a big, and I say big in quotes, right? I never wanted a big business as far as high overhead. I wanted a very lean business. And yet I got caught up into wanting to build up a big business and scale it and do more deals and make more money. And what I found was that it was starting to take energy from me versus give me energy. And I'm a big advocate of leaning into your strengths, doubling, tripling down on the things that give you energy, and trying to outsource, delegate, or completely eliminate the things that drain energy from you. And so it was beginning of 2019, I attended a mutual friend of ours, Steve Kavanaugh, hosts something called Master Mission, which was out in Guatemala. It was half mission trip, half mastermind. And during my turn on the hot seat, I shared with people that I felt like there was something bigger that I was meant to do with my life. I felt like something was missing. Right. It's not that I was unhappy. It was just, there was a lack of fulfillment that the business wasn't giving me anymore. And it was interesting to me when people would reach out to me, complimenting me or sharing with me, hey, thank you for that podcast episode, or thank you for this or that, because it really impacted my life and or business. I got more juice out of that than I did closing a $20,000, $30,000 deal. Right. And that might sound crazy to somebody listening, but it was the truth. Like, the business became very boring. It was just close a deal, on to the next one, close a deal, on to the next one. And I was getting more joy out of the people I was working with in my team, not so much the actual vehicle, not the business, right? So to make a super long story a little shorter, through that mastermind, there was a lot of breakthroughs and takeaways, and working with my coach, who I believe happens to be your coach as well, and having conversations with you, having conversations with a handful of other people, I realized that I needed to serve more people. I wanted to take the feeling I got from that the podcast was giving me, and I wanted to impact more people. So Steve Kavanaugh and I, again, a mutual friend, we got together and we launched Ascend, which is it's a hybrid mastermind and coaching group. And now we're completely full, and we're 15 months into it. And I'm getting just so much, it's so fun. I'm getting so much, that's where my passion is. So that put me in a position earlier this year where I finally said, I need to make a decision with my wholesaling business. And in June, I finally decided to exit the business after 15 years. And one of my key team members is essentially now, in business on his own. And he kind of retained me as a consultant. And so I still get a piece of the deals that they close moving forward, but I'm no longer in the day-to-day operations. And yeah, man, it was the right decision. I haven't looked back. I've been enjoying the summer, enjoying my family, and just focused again on the things that really give me energy.
Awesome, man. I love that story, man. And then sounds like the mastermind is almost as good as mine, but hey, that's another topic, right?
Nobody can top yours, my man. I'm not going there.
Yeah, listen. So there's so much to unpack from what you just said. And I want to, piggyback on some things, because as I interview immigrants on here, right? What I hear sometimes is, when they move from another country coming in here, right? Sometimes they have to leave something behind. Well, they have to leave something behind. Sometimes it's a business, sometimes it's a career, sometimes it's a family, or whatever it might be, right? And what ends up happening, what's very difficult for them to be able to come here, is because their identity is tied into that career, tied into that business, or whatever it might be. And then they feel lost when they're here, right? And what I heard from you at the beginning of the conversation about that business, you've had this business for a very long time. And then you said, identity being tied into the business. I don't know if it was like that for you, but, first couple of questions. Did you ever think that you were going to end up selling this business when you started it? Second thing, did you ever think about getting it to, having overhead $50,000 a month, right? And if not, how did you arrive there? What was the reason for that? Yeah. And then that decision, let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So let me answer your first question. Refresh my memory on the first question.
Was your identity?
Correct. So look, as far as the identity is concerned, I think a part of it for me, Peter, was the fact that because I host a podcast and it's so much more than real estate, but because I teach people about real estate investing and people have come to me for that type of advice, which I'm super grateful for. There was a little bit going on where like I questioned myself, like if I'm not active in the business, do I lose any type of credibility? And what I realized was that was just a BS story that I was kind of allowing to enter my thought process. But if anything, I feel that now being on the other side of this, it has given me more credibility. I've always been a ready, fire, aim type of guy. And many times that has served me very well. And there's been a few times where it's kind of bitten me in the butt, right? But I didn't build this business when I got into it. I wasn't thinking, let me sell it. Honestly, I didn't know what I was doing when I got into this business. I just started doing. I just started kind of taking action. Everybody uses that phrase, right? But I was just a doer. And I had some success with it. And I made a lot of mistakes along the way. Don't get me wrong. I still continue to make mistakes. And that's where the growth comes from. But no, I didn't. I was having conversations with you and some others earlier this year about, is the business sellable? Have I created it in such a way where it's sellable? And the answer was no. However, there were assets in the business that were sellable. And I did sell off certain assets of the business. But because wholesaling is a very transactional, it's a transactional business. I don't personally know anybody that has sold a 100% wholesaling business. I'm not saying it's not possible, but a lot of the systems and infrastructure that was built for this market. And can it translate to other markets and to other businesses? Yes. And I think people can plug into certain aspects of what we built, but no, I didn't sell the business the way that you would traditionally sell a business. I sold assets of the business. And then I'm fortunate where I still get to work with the people that I was working with before, the people that I love. Yeah. And I'm still in a position where I can participate in the deals, just not be involved in the managing, the building, the growing, and the scaling of the team. Now, to answer your second question, it's a very lazy answer to suggest and say that I kind of just fell into wanting to grow and scale the business. But I joined a high-level mastermind about 3 years ago, and I was around a lot of people that's what they were doing. And I kind of looked at them and I said, if they can do it, I can do it.
All right.
And I challenged myself. I said, I've been doing this so long and it's a nice lifestyle business, but I want to take it to another level. And so there was an element of, it wasn't an ego thing. It was just, I wanted to challenge myself and I wanted to build a bigger business, but that was never in my vision.
Right. I bring up a really good point because you said there was never in a vision. And I think that's one of the missing elements for a lot of people, right? Because we look at the environment, look at the people that we're around with, and, look at some of the most successful people out there in our industries and all that kind of stuff, right? I sometimes look at like Tony Robbins. He is my mentor. That guy is, to me, it's like, holy cow, right? But having that kind of a business for me, having, own 50 businesses or whatever he owns, and all that kind of stuff, that seems like a lot of headache for me, right? And I think that vision element is so important. So at what point did that, so I assume that when you started out, you didn't have a vision, right? I'm talking about vision for your life. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah. So when I joined that mastermind that I decided to grow and scale the business, I was just getting back into recreating my vision. I created a vision back in 2013, right after I got married. Mm-hmm. But like many people, it kind of sat on the shelf. It collected dust. I wasn't really looking at it. And so much changed over that 4 or 5 year period. So at the time, I was just starting to figure out what I wanted. And maybe that's a lesson and a takeaway for a lot of people, is that I was making big business and life decisions without necessarily being clear on what I actually wanted.
Right. Elaborate a little bit more. What do you mean you actually want it? What does that mean?
Yeah, so again, I mentioned that I saw other people building and scaling these large real estate investing businesses and wholesaling businesses. And what was coming to me was, hey, if they can do it, why can't I do it? Right. And I never doubted myself. I knew I could do it. Mm-hmm. And I just did it. But again, I never envisioned having overhead of $40,000 to $50,000 a month. I never envisioned having a team of 8 to 10 people. If anything, if I'm being honest, I want the exact opposite. I want a very high profitable, lean, low overhead business. And it became the exact opposite. The more team members I added and the more, just systems and infrastructure and resources, the tighter the margins became. and the more headaches I started having because I was having to manage more people and personalities. And, when you get to a point in your business where you have to do X amount of deals per month just to keep the lights on, so for us, between 2 and 3 deals a month just to break even, I said to myself, something's off with this. Like, this is not what I want. There's nothing wrong with building a big business. So don't get me wrong. I want you to hear me loud and clear. It just wasn't what I wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, and it reminds me of a story that someone that we both know shared that back in like 2001, he needed $25,000 to live for the entire year, like meet his basic needs, right? And then as he started growing and listening to different mentors and everything before he had this quote unquote vision for his life, all of a sudden, a few years later, he built out his business and now he needed $25,000 for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that stressed the heck out of the guy, right? Because, like you said, think about it, 25 grand in 2 weeks. You got to come up with that 25 grand every 2 weeks to support your life, your employees, and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a huge realization. And so my next question for you is this. So you came to this conclusion, right? Was it an easy decision to go and let go of that company, like sell it off?
No, it wasn't. In my heart of hearts, I had already made the decision 5-6 months earlier, but it was a difficult decision. And so I was holding on to it, right? There was a little bit of I guess there was a little fear of the uncertainty. If that makes any sense. What I mean by that is that, look, I have supreme confidence in myself. I just have the belief that I'm going to succeed no matter what I do. And that doesn't mean I don't make mistakes, because I make a ton of them. And I've failed a bunch of times, significantly more times than I've succeeded. But at the end, I just have faith and confidence that I'm going to come out on top. So it wasn't that, hey, if I let go of this business, what am I going to do? It wasn't that. It was, am I making the right decision? Because what am I going to do with the time I do have, right? I wanted to continue to work with my team. In particular, there was 2 team members that I have grown very close to. And so once I spoke to them about this, what would that look like? Am I going to lose them and the ability to be able to work together and build a relationship? And I knew something was off, Peter, when I was on my daily huddles with my team, because we would check in every single day for 15 minutes, report on KPIs and the numbers of the business and discuss the deals and everything else. I found myself just not wanting to have those types of conversations anymore. And as the leader of the business, I didn't find that was fair to my team, because I've always been, you can't be half pregnant. You're all in or you're all out, And I felt that I owed them more, and mentally I was starting to feel like I was checking out. And that's when I just knew, I got to have a conversation with them. I have to be very open and transparent about what I'm feeling. And they were so supportive. And so we worked on a transition plan that took about 3-4 weeks. And yeah, man, I'm happy, dude. I made the right decision.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I'm still going to be in real estate. I still enjoy real estate. I just don't necessarily want to be an active everyday operator where I have to feed this beast, this machine that I've built in order to keep doing that. I still want to continue to build a rental portfolio. I'm evaluating if I'm going to be getting involved in storage deals. And so I'm not going anywhere. Obviously, I still have the podcast, but yeah, I just don't want to be an active operator.
Yeah. You look happier, man. You look good too, man. Pardo is working for you, man. So awesome. So listen, I want to come back around to the identity thing, because this is that people are dealing with, I think, quite a bit. So I want to ask you, who's Alex Pardo as far as the identity goes?
Wow. Great question. Who's Alex Pardo? Somebody who's meant to serve people. When I was in Guatemala and I kind of revealed to everybody, hey, I feel like God's been tapping me in the shoulder. I feel like I've been given gifts. And I think of the parable of the 3 guys, and one of them buries his talents. The other one, multiplies it, and the other one really multiplies it, right? I felt like to a certain degree, I was kind of burying my talent, and what I'm doing now gives me energy, the ability that, we can record this and it can impact and reach many, many people. And so Alex is somebody who's meant to serve others, who's meant to change people's lives. And so right now I'm doing that through the podcast, through the mastermind, and I enjoy coaching people. I enjoy coaching the right people. And then family is a big part of my life. I'm a big lifestyle guy. And so I'm a father, I'm a husband, and I'm really enjoying that, watching my girls grow and being an integral part of their life. And that's not a responsibility I take lightly at all.
And I love that response, guys, because here's the thing. I don't know if you guys noticed, but when he said the first thing came out of his mouth is, I am someone who is, supporting people, right? Providing people, helping people, right? And that kind of identity, nobody can take that away from you, right? Because you can do that in so many different levels. You can do that with coaching, and you can do it like on the street. You can do it, you walk in the store, you can do it with your family and everything, right? And that identity stays with you, and that can fulfill you in such a big way, because when you start giving out to others, and I think you can concur with me, when you give it out there, when you put it out there, that's when you really live up. I mean, You're like on cloud nine when you're coaching, aren't you?
I love it, man. I love it, especially when it's with the right people. I want to work with people that also desire to impact other people's lives, because I feel like it's a bigger ripple effect, right? If I can work with somebody that has a strong desire to want to help people and be a go-giver, I feel like it's that multiplication effect again, versus somebody who's selfish that just wants to build the biggest building in town and keep it all for themselves. Like, that's not the right person for me to work with.
Right. I totally agree, man. Because it perpetuates. It's a ripple effect, like you said. Yeah.
One thing I do want to mention, Peter, is it's kind of, in order to fill other people's cups, you got to make sure your cup is full. Yeah. And I'll never forget, I want to say this was at some point earlier this year, late last year, you sent me an audio message. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's okay if I kind of share with people the gist of what, but it meant a lot to me, because in the position that we're in, that I'm so grateful, and we have the good fortune of working with people as coaches, as leaders. We're constantly pouring into people. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, sometimes your cup tends to it starts to run low, right? Mm-hmm. And dude, you gave me energy, and you sent me a message that meant a lot to me. And so I want to acknowledge you for doing that, man, for keeping me in mind, and just knowing that when you see someone that's always kind of giving of themselves, sometimes they need a recharge, right? And you gave me that recharge. So I'm grateful to you, man, for the friendship, and for I don't know if that was just a sense that you got or how you even knew, but yeah, because we go through seasons in life, and sometimes we need that recharge.
I appreciate you saying that, man. I mean, it's my spidey senses. No, but on a serious note, man, I truly believe, you're right about that. When we're giving out, sometimes we need to fill our own cup, right? We need someone else to give back to us. And when I do this, I talk about it on my podcast. I talk with other people, listen to the nudge, right? I think that is such an important aspect on your life, because think about it. You guys, as you're listening, watching this episode, you have nudges in your life, right? There's something like tapping you, like you thought pops in and somebody in your head pops in. Wonder what they're doing, right? In that moment, reach out to them, right? Yes. It doesn't take much. And you have no idea what kind of impact you have, especially what's going out there in today's world, right? Somebody comes in your mind, go out there and reach out. Send them a quick message, send them a quick voicemail, whatever it might be, right? Yeah. And it can have a tremendous impact. So, man, I appreciate that, man.
The last thing I want to underscore that you just said, because I don't want it to get lost on people, when you feel that nudge, I think the key is to act immediately. Mm-hmm. And whenever you feel that voice, that nudge, that gut feeling, whatever, take the time, take the 30 seconds, the minute, the 10 minutes to have that conversation, to send that message, to do whatever it is you have to do. Because if you don't do it in that moment, the chances of you actually coming back and doing it are slim to none, at least in my experience.
That is true, man. Right on. There you go, man. I love that episode. I love this episode so far, man. So listen, you're talking about your life right now. You're a lot more fulfilled and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know if you mentioned on this particular episode, but before you came on here, that you just went on vacation, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So outside of the fact that, you've realigned your life and you coaching and all that kind of stuff, podcast, what do you think has allowed you to really step into that?
Having clarity. When you know what you want and when you have a strong sense of what you want your life to look like, you're able to reverse engineer the process and figure out, okay, what is it I need to do? What people do I need to have around me? What type of activities or actions or tasks do I need to complete? in order to live my vision, right? And so when you don't have that clarity, you're just kind of going, and you're going with the current of life. And that's a scary place to be, because 10, you can look up 5-10 years and all of a sudden you're like, well, where did the last 5-10 years go? Because you're just going with the current of life. You don't have a plan. And I find that there's too many people in that boat. So I think you need to work on yourself first and foremost. You know, I'm not breaking ground when I say, obviously that's the best investment you can make is in yourself, because no matter how much money you make, no matter all people can take all that stuff away from you, but they can't take away what you know, your knowledge, your experience, your contacts. So work on yourself. And it's hard to sit down and, ask yourself, what do I want for my life? What do I want my life to look like? What kind of business do I want? And how can my business serve my life and serve others? Those are hard questions to answer, and so ask yourself that question. And if you're not clear on that, take the time required to figure that out, because otherwise you're just going to keep doing. And as cliche as it sounds, Peter, you know this, man, we only get one shot, right? Yep. The next minute isn't promised to us. And I think one of the most tragic things that can happen to us is living with regret.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah. So don't waste those minutes. Yeah, I agree with that, man. Yeah. So I have a question for you. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, because I had that question. I have my own opinion on it. And when I coach students, I have my own way of helping them figure that part out. But I want to ask you on there, what if they, the person you said, you got to know what you want. And they're like, their response is, well, I don't know what I want. Like being in that place, well, like, I have no idea what I want.
Yeah.
How would you answer that? How would you address that?
So I would kick it back at them. And you talked about Tony Robbins, a great question is and I know you know where I'm going with it, but I know you don't know, but if you did know, what would that look like? Just paint a picture for me. So I don't let people, when I'm coaching, I don't let them get off that easy with, I don't know. Like we need to go deep. You do know, and it's inside of you, and you might not have all the answers, and you probably don't. But I think we need to start to kind of, peel the layers of the onion back. Mm-hmm. And that's what coaching is. Coaching is oftentimes the people that we work with have the answers inside of them. It's just our job to help them get out of it, right? But as a practical answer, one of the exercises that I've gotten a lot of value from is Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach. He has something called the Genius Zone exercise. Yep. So if you guys Google Dan Sullivan Genius Zone exercise, I don't know if you want to get into it now, but essentially it's an exercise where people will tell you what they feel is your superpower, what they feel you're naturally good at. I think when we're operating in our genius zone, some people call it the unique ability, we're happier, we're more fulfilled, and we tend to just perform better. We do better when we're doubling, tripling down on our strengths. So what I would also caution people is that just because you love something doesn't mean it should be a business for you. I have found that sometimes when I do something I love and I try to monetize it, it actually becomes a job, and it takes the love and the passion away from it. But at the end of the day, I think we need to be operating within the talents that God has given us, because we all have talents, whether you know it or not. And it's your job to discover those talents, and you need to be doing something with those talents. That's how I think you start. That's how I help people answer that question. I don't know what I want to do. Okay, well, what are your talents? What's your genius zone? What are your unique abilities? And from there, we can kind of springboard and figure out, because there's a bunch of paths, and don't try to follow somebody else's path. You're meant to walk your own journey and walk your own path. And I think first that starts with just getting clear on what are your talents? What are you good at? What do you enjoy? What gives you energy? If money wasn't a thing and you were completely fine, like what would you do with your time? And you start to ask those questions, and you start to drill down deeper, and the answers will come out. Might not happen on one call or two calls, but it'll come out.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, man. Look at you. Whoa, I'm impressed.
I don't know if that's a compliment or not, but I guess I'll take it as one.
No, there is a total compliment, man. I totally agree, because sometimes what happens, I think, for people, those people who are like, I don't know what I want. At some point, someone has minimized their possibility, right? Minimized them, said, listen, no more fooling around, or no more doing this, and you got to get an adult. You can't dream. You can't do this, right? You got to do this, right? Or parents said you got to be a doctor, or whatever it might be. And that's when that spark starts to diminish, right? That's when that starts to go down, and then it comes a point where they're just doing it, right? And when you ask them, what do you want? Sometimes they even think like, I can't want, I shouldn't want, right?
Right.
Because that's not a right thing to do. And I think for immigrants, that happens a lot.
I agree.
We come here and we're like, I've seen people who, they clean toilets and all that kind of stuff, right? That's a great thing because it tells you like how you will do whatever it takes kind of thing, right?
Yeah, right.
But at some point, look at some of the most successful people in this world. They don't take no for an answer.
That's right. That's right. And I think, when I think of immigrant entrepreneurs, it's very inspiring because many of them have come from obviously from a different country with little to no resources, and yet they have every excuse in the book not to succeed, and yet they don't believe in excuses and they still succeed in spite of the lack of resources that other people think they don't have, right? But when you have persistence, when you have a strong will, when you have clarity, when you have confidence in yourself, and you just have that attitude where I'm going to make it happen no matter what, you're going to succeed. It's not a matter if, it's just when. And yes, you need to have the right people in your corner, and there's a lot that goes into it, right? I don't think success is one magic pill, but when you just have that belief and that persistence, man, magic can happen.
Yeah.
You just got to be consistent.
Yeah, you have that why, you have that drive to keep you moving. I just had a conversation with a lady that I'm hopefully going to have on a podcast in the future. She grew up in Brazil as a very poor, way down in Brazil kind of thing, poor country, poor house, right? And she said when I was little, she went in the family room, stood up on a chair, and she said, I am going to be a famous photographer, and I'm going to go in the United States, and I'm going to live there. And every morning when I wake up, I'm going to see the mountains. And then I am going to, on my birthday, it's going to snow and all that kind of stuff, right? And, the family's like, okay, right? But she never let that dream go away from her, right? Guess where she's living right now? Guess what she's doing right now, right? And it's such inspiring stories that you can actually, grab onto to see if others can do it. I can do it too. Hey, Paula can do it. The guy from Cuba can do it, right? Anybody can do it, right?
Dude, that's what I was thinking, man. If Polish Peter can do it, anybody can do it. No, I'm kidding, man.
All right, man. Listen, I don't want to, I want to respect your time. So what I want to do is I always have my Polish Peter's final round. So what's the book that you're reading right now?
Oh, do I have it? Where is it? Give me a second.
Rhinoceros Success.
Scott Alexander, Rhinoceros Success. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
What's it about?
It goes, and by the way, I'm only 2 chapters in. So, but essentially what I'm gathering, it's very similar to the One Thing from Gary Keller. It's very similar to the Pumpkin Plan by Mike Michalowicz.
Okay.
Rhinos look at one thing and they put the blinders on and they charge, right? And so essentially that's what this book is, that this book is about putting the blinders on. Again, going back to our conversation, it's a perfect way to tie that in. You do such a great job as being a host. Thank you. You must have known I was going to do that. But it's about knowing what you want and just putting the blinders on and going after it, because that's what rhinos do. So it's a short read. I should be done with it in the next day or two, but highly recommend it.
Awesome. Very cool, man. How do the rhinos do it? Can you show me again?
The rhinos just put the blinders on, go like that.
They go like this? Can you do that again?
They go like this. That's it. There it is. You got to put the pinky up, dude.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, my fellow rhino. All right. So listen, next question for you. I mean, we talk a lot about different things here on this podcast. One last thing that you would want to share that hopefully you have some kind of an impact on immigrant listeners here. What would you share with them?
Wow. What do you? And that's the first answer that's the first thing that pops into my mind, right? Is don't live for your parents. Don't live for people that you see on social media that you respect and admire, and because they're doing it, that's what you should do. Figure out what it is you want for your life, and do because again, we only get one crack at this. So I have this fear of regret, and it's a healthy fear. It's not an unhealthy fear. I always ask myself, if today was my last day, would I be happy with what I've done? Have I maximized my talents, right? And so don't do what your parents want you to do. Don't do what Peter says you should do or what Alex says you should do. And, figure out what it is you want. And there's a lot of ways to try to figure that out. And hopefully some of what we have covered in this podcast can give you some direction there. And if not, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to have these conversations. But yeah, man, just figure out what it is you want for your life and lean into that. Like dive in. Again, going like this and just charging ahead.
I'm going to make this an image for this episode, I think. Both of us are going to go like this.
That's the thumbnail for YouTube, right?
Right on, man. Awesome. Yeah, I totally agree with that, man. Do you? Because, I mean, you don't want to live somebody else's vision, you know?
That's right.
You want to live your own vision. All right, next question. Cuba. Tell us something that we wouldn't know about Cuba.
Wow. Beautiful country. Man, that's a tough one to answer, and I'll tell you why. The Cuba that my parents lived in is a very different Cuba now. There are, my parents, when they came here, they were 10, 11, 12 years old. My mom, my dad, they were kind of in that age range, and they had a strong desire to succeed. And I owe them so much because they don't have an entrepreneurial bone in their body, but they did so much to make sure that my sister and I had the life that they never had growing up. Yeah. And yet sometimes when I meet Cubans that come, particularly to Miami, obviously, because, Miami, there's a huge Cuban population here. There's a sense of entitlement that they have, which is very different than, the Cubans that came in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, because, my aunts and uncles, everybody in my family comes from Cuba, and they didn't have that sense of entitlement. And I feel right now, that's something that at least the ones that I've been in contact with. So don't have a sense of entitlement. Nothing is owed to you. Whether you're Cuban or wherever you're from, don't operate where hey, you have to make the most out of yourself. You can't place your success on other people. Success first starts inward, not outward. And I see too many people pointing the finger and looking, well, they can do it because XYZ, or I can't do it because XYZ. It starts inward, which is why I'm such a believer of always just focusing on yourself as far as from a personal development perspective. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't raised with that sense of entitlement. And I think that's one of my biggest pushes and desires to want to help people, is that we all have the innate ability to succeed, but you got to have that strong desire, and it comes inside first.
I love that, man. That's a great point, man. And it's in today's world, especially, I think this is even more important than ever. Yeah. So next question I have for you. I believe that every single person in the world has a superpower. What's yours? Except for this, besides that.
I'm telling you, this is going to become a thing now. So it's interesting that you asked that question. When I've gone through Dan Sullivan's Genius Zone exercise several times, and I've done them 3 years apart. There's one thing that has come up in the top 3 for me, and it's being a connector. I think, and I didn't even realize it until I went through it, but people tell me that I'm just a naturally good connector. And so I think that's a superpower. I have the ability to communicate with people and kind of read between the lines and glean something from the conversation that they're lacking or needing, and just keeping it in my mind, filing it away. And at some point in the future, I will either make a connection or I'll send you an email with a resource or something. And so I think that's a superpower, even though that's what other people recognize as a superpower in me. I don't even know that because I don't think about it. I think so maybe it's just a natural thing that God gave me. But that's one of them. And I think people have told me I'm a pretty decent communicator. And so I think, I don't know, despite the accent, so.
No, I agree, man.
Yeah, I like connecting with people, man. I like building relationships. I think I'm a very genuine person. I don't know if that's a superpower, but I care about people. And I think that comes across.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, man. You're spot on, I think, about that. All right, next question, man. If you had the ability to travel anywhere in time throughout the entire world, where would you go?
So I need you to clarify the question. Are you saying like a location, if I could travel anywhere, or are you saying like a particular, like if I wanted to live in the 60s, for example?
Yeah, time in the time, right? Ever. Like when would you go?
You want to know what, man? What comes to mind for me is I think it would have been very interesting to live during the times of the Great Depression.
Really? How so?
Yeah. I would love to see how I would be careful. I want to be careful what I put out there, right? Because I certainly don't want to, we're living in a pandemic right now, and I'm not comparing this pandemic to the Great Depression, right? But it would have been interesting. The people that succeed and have come out of the Great Depression, when you go through the fire, what's that saying? Pressure makes diamonds. You know, and fire can mold and create all these things. Mm-hmm. I think when you go through certain adversities in life, and I think a lot of immigrants that are listeners of your show can probably relate to this. When you go through certain adversities, it shapes you. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily define you, and it shapes you. And so I think it would have been interesting. I'm not saying I would have loved to have lived during the Great Depression, but it would have been interesting to have just like had that adversity and just see how I would have come out on the other end of it. And so, yeah, man, that's the answer, and I'm sticking with it.
All right. Awesome, man. You know what? To that point, I think that after this whole thing is, over, at some point, I think it's going to shift, to this whole pandemic. I think we as a country, we as individuals are going to come out a lot stronger, I think.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope.
So that's my belief. So, all right, listen, last question. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, and I don't know why they would, but if somebody wants to get a hold of you, find out more about you and all that kind of stuff, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. You're something else, man. You are a character, my man. A couple of different places, flipempire.com. Flipempire.com. I have a podcast on Apple Podcasts and some of the other platforms called The Flip Empire Show. So I encourage you to look that up. And then on Facebook, or social media, Instagram at Alex Pardo 25. And/or you can shoot me an email, alex@flipempire.com.
Awesome, man. I'll put in the show notes. Listen, guys, I am, you guys know me on this podcast. I am so blessed to know Alex. I mean, he is an amazing human being, and I'm just so, I can't wait to hang out with him. Anytime we come together, we have a lot of fun, and the guy is genuine. He's got integrity, and he's really a great connector with people. So thank you, man, for coming up to the podcast again. I really appreciate you, man. Seriously, from the bottom of my heart. And if there's anything I can do for you, just shoot me an email or text, and I'll help you out, man. For all of you guys, listeners, I appreciate you guys. On those on Facebook Live watching it right now, I appreciate you jumping on here. If you want to hear more of episodes like this, not just Alex, by other immigrants, head over to mastersunite.com. That right there. See, there we go. Right there.
The other way. There you go.
Polish move right there. Not right there, but right there. mastersunite.com. And there's a whole bunch of episodes on there. You can find me anywhere on the podcasting platforms, iTunes and Spotify. And we're on Alexa right now. So she might not pop up. She didn't pop up. So, okay. So with that said, thank you guys. Love you all. See you in the next episode.